You wouldn't survive 24 hours in medieval times. Not because you're weak, not because you're soft, but because everything you depend on, every invisible system keeping you alive, would vanish the moment you stepped into that world. Imagine waking before sunrise on a cold dirt floor, the air thick with smoke from a hearth that never fully clears the room. There's no alarm clock, no glass windows sealing out the wind, no insulated walls. The first breath you take burns slightly because indoor fires fill medieval homes with soot. Your throat feels dry. You're already dehydrated, and you haven't even stood up yet. Clean water isn't waiting in a bottle or flowing from a tap. You'll have to walk to a well or stream, and that water may carry parasites your immune system has never encountered. By midday, a simple sip could begin an infection that no antibiotic will cure. Breakfast isn't cereal, eggs, or coffee. It's coarse bread made from grain ground with stone mills that leave tiny fragments of grit inside. Every bite slowly wears down your teeth. Dental care doesn't exist beyond crude tools and prayer. A small cavity can turn into an abscess. An abscess can turn into a fever. A fever can kill you within days. But you won't even get that far, because your stomach isn't prepared for the bacteria in poorly stored food. Meat is salted, smoked, or dried, but preservation is inconsistent. Milk spoils quickly, vegetables are seasonal and often dirty, food poisoning is common, and diarrhea alone is deadly in a world without rehydration therapy. Now consider the labor. Medieval life is not a vibe, it's relentless physical exhaustion. If you're a peasant, which statistically you would be, your survival depends on backbreaking agricultural work, plowing fields with wooden tools, harvesting by hand, carrying water, chopping wood. No ergonomic handles, no steel machinery, no weekends. Your modern muscles would fail within hours, blisters would tear open your skin, infection would creep in through the cracks. There are no sterile bandages, only cloth that may already carry bacteria. Even if you somehow avoid illness, the weather won't spare you. Summers bring heatstroke under heavy wool clothing. Winters bring frostbite in homes that barely trap warmth. A bad harvest means famine, and famine doesn't mean skipping meals. It means watching your body consume itself while you grow too weak to stand. If you're a woman, childbirth alone is a life-threatening gamble. If you're a child, survival to adulthood is not guaranteed. Disease moves silently and swiftly. The Black Death didn't feel dramatic at first. It felt like a fever and swollen lymph nodes. Then entire households were gone. There is no germ theory yet. People don't understand why illness spreads. They pray, they flee, they blame. Quarantine is inconsistent. Hygiene is limited. You can wash, yes, but soap is harsh and not widely available, and clean clothing is a luxury. Lice are common. Fleas are everywhere. Rats live closer to you than comfort would allow. Now think about injury. Twist your ankle stepping on uneven ground. There's no x-ray, no hospital, no painkiller stronger than diluted alcohol or herbal mixtures of uncertain effectiveness. Break a bone. It may never set correctly. Get a deep cut while working. Tetanus is waiting. Even minor wounds can become fatal. Violence is another constant shadow. There's no modern policing system. Justice can be swift and brutal. If you're accused of theft, heresy, or defiance, punishment may be public and severe. Social hierarchy is rigid. You cannot simply change careers or move freely. Your birth determines your path. Lords control land. Serfs are bound to it. Freedom is limited and expensive. Education is rare. Most people cannot read. Information travels slowly and often inaccurately. If war passes through your region, you don't watch it on a screen. You hide, or you suffer the consequences. Armies live off the land, and that land includes your food stores. But perhaps the hardest part isn't the physical danger. It's the psychological shock. There is no electricity. When the sun sets, darkness is nearly absolute. No glowing cities on the horizon. No hum of distant traffic. Just black sky and the sounds of animals, wind, and whatever moves beyond the edge of firelight. Superstition fills the gaps in understanding. Unexplained illness may be blamed on curses. Comets are omens. Forests feel endless and dangerous because, in many ways, they are. Your modern sense of independence would struggle under constant community scrutiny. Privacy barely exists. Homes are shared spaces. Secrets are hard to keep. Every action is visible. Every deviation noticed. And yet, medieval people were not foolish or weak. They were adapted to their world in ways you are not. Their immune systems were hardened by constant exposure. Their bodies were trained from childhood for labor. Their expectations were aligned with survival, not comfort. They understood seasons, soil, animals, and craft Most modern people never need to develop. The reason you wouldn't survive 24 hours isn't because you lack intelligence or courage, it's because survival is contextual. You are built for a world of infrastructure, sanitation systems, medical knowledge, global supply chains, climate control, digital communication. Remove those, and the illusion of individual self-sufficiency collapses instantly. The medieval world demands resilience forged from birth, tolerance for discomfort beyond modern imagination, and acceptance of risk as a daily companion. Even something as simple as navigating social norms could put you in danger if you speak out of place or challenge authority without understanding the consequences. Your accent, your behavior, your ignorance of customs would mark you as strange. Suspicion alone could isolate you, and isolation in a tightly interwoven agrarian society is lethal. Survival depends on community cooperation, shared harvests, shared labor, shared defense. If you don't belong, you don't eat. So when we romanticize candlelit castles and armored knights, we forget the smell of unwashed streets, the constant ache of manual work, the fragility of life balanced on harvest yields and weather patterns. We forget that comfort, safety, and longevity are recent achievements in human history. The medieval person who would look at you, soft hands, uncalloused feet, unused to hunger, unused to darkness, would not see superiority. They would see vulnerability. And in their world, vulnerability is fatal. You wouldn't survive 24 hours in medieval times not because they were primitive, but because they were perfectly engineered for a reality that no longer exists, and you are not. You wouldn't survive 24 hours in medieval times, and even if by some miracle you did, the second day would begin breaking you in ways you never expected. Because survival wasn't just about avoiding disease or hunger, it was about enduring a world where uncertainty was constant and comfort was almost non-existent. By nightfall of your first day, you'd already feel the psychological weight pressing in. The silence would be overwhelming. No distant sirens, no glowing phone screen, no instant connection to anyone beyond shouting distance. Darkness in the medieval world wasn't aesthetic, it was consuming. Once the fire dimmed, your world shrank to the edge of flickering light. Every sound outside, cracking, branches, animal calls, footsteps, would trigger fear because danger was not rare. Wolves, bandits, or desperate wanderers could be real threats. Sleep would not be deep, it would be cautious, interrupted, and cold. And then there's the smell. We romanticize the Middle Ages with stone castles and golden candlelight. But the reality was a mix of smoke, livestock, sweat, damp wool, manure, and open waste. Cities had no modern sewage systems. Chamber pots were emptied into streets. Rain washed refuse into pathways where people walked daily. Even rural villages lived closely with animals because livestock meant survival. You wouldn't just see hardship, you would smell it constantly. Your modern senses, accustomed to deodorized and sanitized environments, would struggle with the unfiltered reality of human life without industrial cleanliness. But let's go deeper. Think about knowledge. Today, if you feel sick, you search symptoms online. In medieval times, illness might be explained by imbalanced humors, divine punishment, or bad air. Treatments included bloodletting, herbal concoctions, or relics believed to carry holy power. Some remedies worked by accident, many did not. If you developed appendicitis, a kidney infection, or even severe strep throat, your odds were grim. A simple fever could spiral into death because no one understood bacteria. Even minor dehydration could become fatal. And remember, your immune system is trained for a modern environment. Medieval pathogens would hit you like an invisible army. Social structure would suffocate you next. Individual freedom, as you understand it, barely existed. Your clothing alone could define your class. There were sumptuary laws controlling what colors and fabrics different ranks could wear. You couldn't just blend in if you lacked the right attire or mannerisms. Speech patterns mattered, customs mattered, religion shaped daily rhythm. Church bells dictated time, morning prayers, midday prayers, evening prayers. Refusing to participate wasn't seen as personal preference. It could be seen as rebellion or heresy. And accusations of heresy were not light matters. Trials were often biased, and punishments could be brutal. Then there's food scarcity. You might think, I'll just hunt or forage. But forests were often owned by nobles. Hunting without permission could result in severe punishment. Poaching wasn't survival, it was a crime. Crops depended entirely on weather. A single failed harvest could mean starvation for an entire village. Grain was life. If mold contaminated stores, entire communities suffered. There were no supermarkets importing food from across continents, no refrigeration trucks, no global trade networks stabilizing supply. Survival was hyper-local and fragile. And let's not ignore mental resilience. Modern life shields you from constant confrontation with death. In medieval times, death was visible and frequent. Children died, mothers died in childbirth, plagues swept through without warning. Executions were public. You would see loss regularly, and there was no therapy, no structured grief counseling, no medical explanation offering comfort. Faith provided meaning for many, but fear was woven into everyday existence. Fear of famine, fear of illness, fear of divine judgment, fear of war. Even time itself felt different. There were no precise clocks in every household. Days followed sunlight. Winters felt longer because they truly were darker and harder. Productivity wasn't optimized by electricity, it was limited by nature. Your circadian rhythm would shift whether you liked it or not. And boredom, real, unfiltered boredom, would exist in long stretches between seasons of intense labor. No streaming, no scrolling, no instant entertainment. Storytelling, song, and community gatherings filled some gaps, but stimulation was nothing like the constant digital input your brain is wired to expect. Now imagine conflict. If you were conscripted or you'd in feudal disputes, warfare wasn't distant strategy. It was mud, blood, and steel at close range. Armor was heavy. Weapons required training from youth. You cannot learn swordsmanship overnight. Battle injuries meant infection. Psychological trauma had no name. Survival after combat was as uncertain as survival during it. And yet, medieval people endured. They developed resilience not because they chose hardship, but because hardship was the baseline. Community bonds were strong because isolation meant death. Skills were practical and immediate. Blacksmithing, weaving, farming, herbal medicine. Knowledge passed orally across generations. They weren't surviving despite their world. They were surviving because they were shaped by it from birth. You, however, are shaped by climate control, antibiotics, processed food safety standards, and instant communication. Remove those, and your dependency becomes clear. Your strength today is specialization, coding, marketing, design, logistics. Medieval strength was adaptability to physical survival. Could you thresh grain for hours, skin an animal, recognize edible plants without a guidebook, deliver a child safely, repair a leaking thatched roof before a storm, navigate by stars alone? By the end of 24 hours, exhaustion would set in, not just physical, but cognitive. The constant vigilance, the cultural disorientation, the biological exposure to unfamiliar microbes, the absence of comfort systems, all of it compounds. Survival isn't about a dramatic duel or escaping a plague cart. It's about enduring relentless discomfort with no guarantee that tomorrow improves. So when we say you wouldn't survive 24 hours in medieval times, it's not an insult. It's perspective. Modern society has insulated you so completely that you've forgotten how many invisible layers stand between you and chaos. Medieval people lived without those layers. They faced raw existence daily and adapted accordingly. Drop into that world unprepared, and it wouldn't be cinematic, it would be overwhelming. The romance would fade by sunrise. The struggle would begin immediately, and survival would stop being a thought experiment and become a brutal, ticking reality.